The seagulls. My earliest memory of having seagulls in our lives was when the kids were smaller and we would have these picnic lunches out in the park, out by the beach area. And we would, like I said, pack just a little lunch for ourselves and go out there to enjoy the beautiful day. It was family time. And I remember usually one or two of these seagulls would pop up, and we call them the scouts, of course. Later on, we would refer to them as the scouts. And they would pop over there, and they'd be timid at first. And the girls were small then, and they would throw it out a French fry or a potato chip or whatever else we were having with our lunch. And the seagulls would just gulp it down enthusiastically, and then they would just take off after a while. And here they come. They come back with a horde of seagulls. And they would be dive bombing us. And the kids would be screaming, and my wife would be furious because she knew that I guess I was guilty of tossing out food for these seagulls also. And I would do it to make her upset at me just to get a charge out of her. But I know that it was wrong. But what the heck, I did it anyway. And the girls were laughing, and we'd be running to the car, and these things were just dive bombing us. And they were just ruining our day, and we were just making the best of it. Our second seagull stories has to do with actual family. I had, we refer to them as seagulls because seagulls will swoop in and just ruin everything. They'll just crap all over whatever situation or good time you're having, and then they'll leave. And I had relatives coming in when my mom was quite sick. She was getting sicker. The disease was progressing. It was almost like a step increase or decrease or whatever. And I remember I had this one relative who would come by, and this relative would be bragging about how they were taking care of someone's daughter who wasn't even related to her. And my mom had actually looked after this family. So when they were quite small, my mom had babysat them and cooked for them, cleaned for them, and even nursed their mom when she was having these children, her children. So as this was happening, this person would show up. And I remember one time I came home and I asked my sister, I said, where's mom? And she said, she's in her room. She's on the bed crying. And I walked in and I said, Mom, what's going on? What's happening? And she said, oh, so-and-so came over today and told me that my mother's dead. And then she says to me, son, why didn't you tell me? And I realized what this person had done. So I said, oh, Mom, that's not true. I just saw your mother. I saw Grandma. She was just here. Really? But where is she? I said, oh, she went out to the store. She'll be right back. Why don't you get up and we'll have some coffee or something to eat. We'll watch a little TV and then we'll just talk for a while. And my mom was looking at me and she had these sad eyes and she says to me, why would they tell me that if it wasn't so? Even in my mom's condition, she knew it was wrong to be told something like that. And I wondered about that throughout the years. So later on, when I confronted this person and I said, you can't do this. You cannot come by and tell Mom that most of her loved ones are gone. And I remember this person looked at me and says, she needs to be told the truth. And I'm going to do that. And I said, well, it's upsetting her greatly and she's going into a depression. It's almost like she's feeling and reliving the passing of her mother all over again for the first time, as well as her brothers and her sisters and everyone else. And I could not make her understand this person. I could not make that person understand what was going on. So I told my sister, from now on, when this person shows up, just don't open the door. I said, I'll deal with it later on, and I'll tell them that I'll call them up whenever Mom's available to be seen or visited. And that's how I handled that situation. I had even closer relatives who just refused to cooperate and take care of my mom. And I remember how sad it was. And sometimes he would even get abusive. It was so bad. I remember this family would come over, and we would be sitting at the table, and we would all be having our dinner. And at this point, we had put Mom to bed, so we're sitting there at the table having our late dinner, and my mom would be restless in the next room. Well, I figured out after a while, I knew what was happening. My mother needed some assistance because she was needing a diaper change. So I would get up in the middle of a meal, literally in the middle of a meal, and my sister, who's hearing impaired, would get up with me. Never asked her to, she just did, and we would go in there, and we would clean her up and change her, of course, everything, wash her up, and then let her put her back in so she could rest for the rest of the evening. Never once did these people ever get up and want to assist us. They knew what was happening, but they just didn't want to do that. And there were times when my mom would speak out of turn, which I never thought was really bad. My mom would make a reference to someone, and one of those individuals would cuss my mother out, literally cuss my mother out. And I'm thinking, I wasn't there when it happened. I'm so glad I wasn't, because I think I wouldn't have been able to take that. But my wife was, and my wife was telling this person, she doesn't know what she's saying, and she doesn't mean it. But they were seagulls. And then my last experience with seagulls was when we were looking for caregivers. And never in my life have I ever run into more lazy, thieves, critical, intimidating people. Some were the worst. And of course, some were saints. They were fantastic. It took us a long time to find the really good ones. And I remember after going through a particularly bad time, I called the agency, and the person who was running the agency told me, well, we have no one. It's either the person that we're sending or no one. And I said, okay, I will take no one. And they hung up. I hung up on them, and then we just sucked it up for a while longer until we kept on finding other people that finally, eventually, from other agencies that could help us. It's a very difficult time. I remember some of these individuals would come in, and they would literally just sit there, and they would be bossing my disabled sister around, pointing to her. They knew she was deaf, and they figured that she was an easy mark because my mom also had Alzheimer's and my sister was deaf. And they would point to her and point to their mouths like they were hungry, and they would have my sister cooking for them. Another one was my sister was convinced that she was a gang-affiliated woman who was quite intimidating and would hit her up for money and never pay her back. I had another one come in, and she was forcing my mother to sign her name to see if she could sign her name. What was that all about? I had another one who came in and would shave her or try to groom her, and it wasn't her responsibility to do that. So we had quite a few experiences with this. You have to find every way of solving these things as they happen. Sometimes you're on a fly. It does keep you up at night because you get so worn out from the everyday life plus what you're seeing with your loved one. But you need to find out the best way to fix these problems. If it's a caregiver, you don't have to put them in the hands of someone that you don't trust. You don't have to put them somewhere where they're going to get abused or talk to a certain way. No one needs that. They deserve respect, and they should be talked to as a person. They don't cease to be individuals just because they're not well mentally. There's something going on. It's just not right. These are really important points that I'm making right now, and seagulls are definitely going to become a part of our lives at one time or another. It just so happened that they came at different times in our lives. The beginning story with the birds is kind of a funny one, but then later on the serious ones came in with the family seagulls, and then later on with the caregiver seagulls. So I just wanted to share this seagull story with you, and I would like to hear if any of you have experienced anything like this.